We still suffer from the effects of that to this day. That cultural loss, because those lives were taken.
The Reign of Terror is a sinister story of misdeeds and murder, oil and intrigue. One of the largest oil fields in North America led to a windfall of riches.
It created a weird, great times, horrible times, all at the same time.
And the downfall of many Osage families. Jim Gray is a former chief of the Osage Nation. He's also the great-grandson of Henry Roan, an Osage Indian shot and killed during the Reign of Terror in 1923.
What would be the motive to murder Henry Roan? Well, if you're William Hale and you're murdering this entire family, you want to eliminate any possibility of anybody making a claim from the outside for any of those head rights.
In a lust for riches, William Hale was the mastermind of a plot to use murder to steal the wealth of an Osage family. The affluent rancher, banker, and swindler was the so-called king of the Osage Hills. His kingdom was gained through bribery, intimidation, and murder.
The William Hale trial was the O.J. Simpson trial of its day. Even though in my family's case, the FBI did solve my great-grandfather's crime. For every one they did solve, there was probably scores of Osages whose cases will never get investigated. But their deaths are just as harmful to them as they were to mine.
The Osage Nation not only faced unbridled greed, but also governmental indifference. And when the exploitation of wealthy tribal members happened, there was little the tribe could do.
Oh my God, how did this happen? Well, they had help, didn't they? There's guys sitting in Washington in their leather-bound chairs looking at each other going, we've got to get, they're making too much money. That question, and the way it's said, and the way it implies that Indians aren't supposed to have money. They're not supposed to be successful. They're not supposed to be sitting on some of the wealthiest oil land in the country. Why? Because they're Indian. That's why.
Gray says far too many cases were ignored by state and local law enforcement, with too few investigated or prosecuted.
I guess people just thought that, well, it's a bunch of Indians, who cares? See, you know, you can rationalize stealing from an Indian if you don't see him as equal.
The grab for power, the murder, the reign of terror led to distrust, a feeling of vulnerability and betrayal, and little sense of security. What modern-day experts call historical trauma.
Historical trauma is a term that we use to understand the psychological, emotional, cultural, social impact of mass trauma that's been perpetrated against people because of some aspect of their identity.
Lisa Cromer is an associate professor of psychology and is the executive director of the University of Tulsa's Institute of Trauma, Adversity, and Injustice.
When you look at the Osage Reign of Terror, I mean, there were laws at that time that set that up to happen.
She says the Osage Reign of Terror, like the Holocaust and the Tulsa Race Massacre, are instances of historical trauma.
It's been called this conspiracy of silence because sometimes the people who suffered and survived don't talk to their children about it, or they don't talk to their grandchildren about it. Maybe because it's so painful.
But now with the movie Killers of the Flower Moon, the world is talking about it. Jim Gray says it's a story that needs to be told in schools, in the history books, and on the big screen.
Not just Henry Roan, but this whole story. Because it helps us understand things we should remember, things we should avoid repeating.
Despite trauma of the past, the Osage people are moving forward. Next, how the tribe is keeping its traditions alive.